Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusa.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard. Welcome to yet another edition of the Pan-African Pyramid. This is the People's Pan-African Parliament here that sits at Fairway Hotel every Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. in Kampala here at Fairway. And the recorded version runs on NBS television on Saturday from 4 to 5. Your speaker is Andrew Irumba Katusa. On the other side of Palestine and Israel, I think the killings have gone ahead despite numerous calls to cease fire. But most importantly, we have seen now the UN Security Council a little bit divided. Individual, some UN members are actually speaking in tongues. Some support what America supported by asking Israel to retaliate, and some have started thinking, no, I think it was a mistake. I have seen people now having mixed reactions on what is happening, and I believe that it was a miscalculation for America to allow anybody to retaliate by killing another innocent group of people. If someone has killed innocent people in your home, you can't support that person to also go and kill innocent people in the other side. You must target those who have killed, not the innocent ones. So by America saying go to Gaza and even kill mosquitoes, kill the animals, kill the birds, kill every living thing, I think they will realize later that it was a miscalculation. However, that's not our topic today. I just passed by to let you know that we are following closely as a Pan-African Parliament here in Kampala. And we don't agree with what is happening in Palestine. This evening we are dealing with another topical discussion, the Africa we want, and how and who the leader is that we should start looking at that can take Africa there. There's an Africa that everybody envisages in their mindset. You think that, I think by now we should be here. You know, there are many people who say, I think in 37 years Uganda should have been here. You know, because look, we were here with South Korea sometime back. We were here with Turkey sometime back. I think now we should be here. But now, generally as a continent, I think we should be taking this route. That's why even you realize that for every war that happens in Africa, solutions, African leaders themselves, they are seeking for solutions from outside the continent. You see, when there is a war in Africa, even the African leaders do not sit together to say we can have a solution manufactured within Africa. No, they are looking for solutions from outside Africa. And those solutions from outside Africa, they also come with conditions. If America is going to side with you like they are doing with Israel, there are conditions attached. If America is coming here to support you on any agenda, there will also be conditions that will be attached that probably may not be of your interest. But he who calls the piper, he who pays the piper, calls the tune. You cannot come and say, come and help me here, and you want me to come and help you, and after solving the problem, you push me back and go back home. And tomorrow you get another problem, you invite me to come and so my issue, my job is only going to be always to come to your home when there is a problem to solve. After solving the problem, you say go back to your home. So those are some of the issues that we have had to deal with by inviting the outside world to solve our home problems. So sometimes we have actually invited them, and after we cry, when you realize that most of the problems that we have suffered, some of them are manufactured, but some of them are from without. And how do they come? Because we invite those people outside the continent to come and solve some of our problems. But when they come to solve our problems, they escalate some of them. They solve A, they escalate B. So you'll always be in the problem. So we want to look at what is that Africa in your picture that you have, you as a young man. Uganda has 80% of its population as young people. What is that Uganda that you envisage in the future to see? And how do you think we can be there? Who is that leader you say, if we get such and such a person, such and such a leader, we empower him in such and such a way, I think we can take off. I think with the available resources in Africa, what we lack is this caliber of a leader that has this kind of vision, and the people that is going to lead that have this kind of vision. A leader, even if did not have the vision, but the led had the vision, the led, because they are the majority, they will actually fine-tune the leader into the national vision or the continental vision. The challenge here is that most of us, the 1.3 billion Africans, our visions are also given to the leaders, and these leaders are 54 in number, but the population they are leading is 1.3 billion people. So who should be having the vision more than the other? I think the led should be having the vision, and it is that vision that they entrust the leader to go and enforce. And once they see that you're actually veering off the vision, they must be able to tell you that, I think here you have gone bad, here you have gone wrong. But the problem is sometimes we may not be able also to see crystal clearly what our vision as a continent is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to set the podium clear now. I will start with Mr. Lisandro Thomas, a freelance journalist from France and a researcher. Now, for you, since you don't come from the continent, you are standing at a certain continent looking into Africa. As a researcher, what do you think Africa lacks? Maybe it also come and colonize France one time. What do you think it is?
It did happen. 736 Moroccans colonized for France, the south of France.
Who colonized France?
Moroccans.
Morocco?
Yeah. The Moors. Yeah, they didn't teach you that, right?
They did.
Yeah, you should
Actually,
check.
I think the entire Africa has been colonized by
There's three times African empire colonized the rest of the world. The first time was the Moors in Morocco. The second were the Ethiopians that at some point went to Arabia Saudi in order to sort out the political conflict that was there. They stayed for 70 years. They were peacemaker, the same way the Ugandan army is peacemaker in Somalia. They were peacemaker in Arabia Saudi. And then the last one there was from Abyssinia, the north of Ethiopia, also reaching the other side of the Red Sea. So there were successful political situations on the African continent. The question is what went wrong, right? What went wrong? And we're partly going to try to answer these questions today. We partly try to answer the question of what went wrong and of what can we do, right? The first part of today's presentation, South Africa we want and the leader to take us there. The first part of the presentations will be about leadership in Africa, what went wrong. Then the second part is what Africa will inherit. What future leader of Africa will inherit? You guys, what type of Uganda will you inherit? Is it the same Uganda that Museveni inherited in 86? Is it the same Uganda that Obote inherited in 1960? No. There is different politics, there is different geopolitics. As you say, the Americans have been powerful, but also now the Chinese are. So they were not the case before. The French are still there. The Europeans are still important actors. So we play a different game, right? We're going to try to understand what game is coming. Not what game is played now, what game is going to be played tomorrow when your generation will be in leadership. Jerry Rawlings and Thomas Sankara were two strong Pan-African leaders. They were trying to help each other in front of imperial powers at the time, the Cold War, right? The Russians and the Americans. Especially the French were playing in West Africa as if they're still in the leadership. And Thomas Sankara and Jerry Rawlings managed to distance their country from the neo-colonial approach, right? Who is the first man that wrote a book about neo-colonialism, by the way? Kwame Nkrumah, president of Ghana. He told us what will happen. How many of us listened? Okay, we were not there, but how many of our fathers listened to what Kwame Nkrumah told us? The antidote of division is unity, right? It's really important to understand, and that's why we had this introduction earlier when we understand that divide and rule has been the main game played here in this continent. Whatever for the French, the Chinese, or the Americans, they play divide and rule. The only antidote, the only Pan-African antidote we have is unity. And unity is not easy to build, But we can see in that picture that it has been done. And that's just one example in many examples of leadership that decide to unite.
It has been done before.
Rather than fight. Okay? The great expectation, minimal capability paradox. Here we have two leaders. In 1980, so this is John Como. He was the leader of the Mugabe was the ZANU-PF, and he had another party, and they were both at the same popularity at the time. But Mugabe took over. Okay. Why did we point out those two leaders? Because Mugabe was one of the most amazing leaders we have had in 20th century. He's definitely in the top 5. He's a teacher. He's educated. He believes in education for his people. He will invest a lot of money in education. He will take money from the army to put it in education. And until today, 2023, I can tell you, Zimbabweans have the chance to be really well educated. And this legacy remains in education for the next generation. However, we all know he also had a really bad side of the story, right? And a lot of Zimbabweans suffered a lot and had to emigrate outside of their country. So that's why I spoke of the great expectations, minimal capability paradox. Because what we're looking at here, we're looking at the past. What happened to the leadership of the past, right? In the second part of this presentation, we look at the future, but now we're looking at the past. And what happened to them? What happened to them is that the first generation of African leaders had to contend with popular expectations. There were a lot of expectations. When they took over in Rhodesia and took it to make it Zimbabwe, a lot of new Zimbabweans, citizens, thought they want to live the same life than the white live. Correct? Because the white had all the land, they had all the beautiful places, all the beautiful lodges. So what was the expectation? The population expect a lot. But remember, the white was 2%. And they built their wealth on black labor. So if you remove black labor, how do you make the money? That's a question that leadership have had to ask. So most workers at the time that used to work under white management believe that under the new black management they will get paid more. They will get better security. They will get better educations. So wage, notably higher wage and better living condition. In almost every case, the state did not have the capacity to deliver. Because what type of institution, what type of political institution did those leaders inherit? They inherit a political institution that was put in place by colonialists in order to colonize. Okay? We understand that. They inherited institution put in place by colonialists in order to colonize. So great expectations from the people, minimal capacity from the state. What type of institution does people inherit? And I think that's very important we understand. It might look like it's a bit far away, and why is it that we're talking about that? But every single stone and step have been made from that period. Here what do we see? It's a picture taken in Cameroon. What we see here, a French colonialist, you can look at him because of his hat. They always have the same hat, even the British. And here they have so some stuff to collect. Rubber. They used to collect rubber for the French, so the French can develop an automobile industry. The rubber were used at the time to make the tires. Without rubber made in Africa, no tires in Europe, no tires in America. Why am I showing you this? Because basically what happened is that every black here is the workforce. We spoke about that before. They were okay with black people. They didn't want to kill all blacks. Colonialists didn't want to kill all blacks. They wanted to make them work for them, right? It's really important. They were that goal of making a black force, a black labor force, working to make money for the small elite of Europeans, right? So here is what that picture shows. So what it shows also is that the system was absolutely unfair. We all know that. By 1945 to 1960, Africa is on fire. There's rebellions everywhere. The Europeans call them rebellions. Here we call them freedom fighters. The people of such as Kenyatta, people such as the Mau Mau, people such as after that Mugabe, Nelson Mandela, all of them were freedom fighters, right? But in order to fight them back, the colonial state had to develop really violent and security institutions. The colonial state, in the last stage of colonialism, fight back really hard. It developed new form of institution to continue to control the African continent. And those are the very same institutions that our leadership have inherited. Okay? Think about the situation between Israel and Gaza. What do we see? More and more violence on the side of the Israelis, because they have a colonial project, and every colonial project is meant to fail. Every colonial project is meant to fail. Whether organized by the French, the Chinese, the Americans, the Rwandese, or the Israelis. Even you guys, if you try to colonize your neighbors, you're gonna fail. Still on this idea of trying to understand what has the leadership inherit. Because we need to understand that politics is not only about your idea. Politics is not only about what you believe. It's also about what are the conditions of your ruling. As you said earlier, 80% of this country is made of young people. Do you rule a country that have 80% of people young, the same way that you rule a country that have 80% of people that are over 60? No, you don't have the same challenge, especially when it comes to education, right? So what happened for those 1960s? A lot of post-colonial economies were oriented towards crop and mineral export. So no colonial state tried to transform the minerals from Africa. They transformed them outside of Africa. And what is it that we observe today? Most of what we use, this laptop, this mic, our phones, are coming from outside. And us, we continue to send that coffee, that tea, and that copper, right? So they were dependent on the price of those industries. Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, and you guys know I appreciate Kenneth Kaunda a lot. I told you, he nationalized the mine. He was himself. But yet, at certain years, the price was low, other year, the price was high. Did he control the price of copper? No. Do we control the price of tea? No. Do we control the price of cocoa? No. Do we control the price of coffee? No. And yet we produce most of those crops. The majority of it is produced. Why is it that we cannot agree on one price to sell to the world? Divide and rule. Divide and rule. If we were united, they would fear that. They would fear that. Bureaucratic extension and growth of parastatal. I wanted to show you that because it's the same as the argument earlier. This is happening in Cameroon, and you can see, oh, this is École de Gendarmerie. École de Gendarmerie means police school, right? And you can see that the French in Cameroon have trained a lot of policemen. And those policemen were the very same one that fight freedom fighters with the French, on the French side. We call them counter-revolutionary. Or Sankara would have called them counter-revolutionary. We can choose the name. But what happened is that one of the solutions available for new leadership was to give position to people. And when you have a strong police and terrible teachers, you put position in the army, you don't put position in education. Because it's simple for you, right? It's simple for you to organize this. Do you guys know DRC, by the way, which was there at the time, is the same side that all Western Europe? Can you imagine a single second? All Western Europe governed by 20 people with a diploma, with a postgrad. And we're not saying politics, or lower. No, we're saying some of them had postgrad in agriculture, others had postgrad in water management. 20 of them controlling all Western Europe. If right now there were only 20 people with diploma controlling Western Europe, what would Western Europe look like? It would look shit. Okay? Let's be really clear. Right now, Europe is controlled by millions of bureaucrats. At the moment Congo takes its independence, Congo is controlled by 20 people that have a postgrad and can understand the task that they have to do. It was, as I said earlier, the code was cheated. Until today, Congo has never been, and that's why you guys need to important to be sure we all understand the importance of history. Until today, Congo have never been ruled and governed by someone that has a master. I'm more educated than every single Congolese president so far. Does that make any sense? Makes no sense. It makes no sense. We're speaking formal education. Obviously, people have other form of education, but I think it's really important when you control the state, when you're supposed to understand the police, the church, the army, all of those institutions, to have the mind that is educated enough, right? Here in Uganda, you guys were lucky. You had way much more people educated. We're not going to get back into that, but the education was better here than it used to be in the Belgium Congo. Okay, that is for the situation as our first leaders. So, what I wanted to say on that first part, I hope you understand that leadership is also depending on the institution they have to govern, the country they have to govern. If you govern a country of 80% young people, as I said, it's not the same as governing a country that have 80% old people. If you govern a country that has been through a war for 50 years, what does people know how to do? They know how to fight. If you govern a country that has been stable and in peace for 50 years, what do they know how to do? They may be more educated, they know their people, they know their culture, they're more stable. I noticed that in my classroom, no one believes in democracy anymore. No one really was here telling me, no, we need a strong election, so outside of a good election, good leadership will come and then we'll transform the country. No. Most Africans don't believe in that anymore. Why? Because the majority of them have been living under fake democracy. They've been living under a leader that fake democracy, fake election, but say there's election and there's democracy. So we have democracy in countries like Zimbabwe officially, we have democracy in countries like South Africa, but at the end, that democracy do not deliver for the people. Do not deliver for the people. Why? Because they're too weak in front of the economic forces. When someone comes with money, whether it's Russian, Chinese, or American, he comes with money, okay? People will choose the money. So there is that element of democracy is too weak. If we organize an election right now, let's say I have Total supporting me, and Irumba has no support. But then suddenly the Chinese and the Russians says, no, you know what, we don't like the French, take the money and beat Mr. Safri at this election. Will you take the money? Yes, of course. Because winning an election costs a lot of money. So you make our leadership weak. Because now they have to go and beg all the power for money. And now they are already wicked. The system is already wicked. So I call it the failure of democracy.
For the money, get the money, come and buy the election.
We have to make sure that the money of elections, if there is election, is coming from Uganda itself. We need to know where does the money come from. We're not Americans, we're not Barack Obama and Joe Biden. We don't have billions of dollars to spend for ads on TV. What we want is to make sure that the regime that we have deliver, right? And my point is, in the future, the youth and these people of this continent will not believe in democracy. People don't believe in democracy anymore. A lot of them believe in authoritarian rulers. How many of you would prefer to have Kagame than an election? You know, when you teach in Pan-African school, like, they love Kagame. They say, no, that man, he has done something of his country, but my leader, he's got elected for the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, but we haven't seen. In Ivory Coast, for instance, we haven't seen really great progress for the people, but yet the leadership is here, elected, re-elected, re-elected. So people don't believe in democracy anymore. Why? Because democracy has failed its people. Democracy has not delivered economic development. And I don't like to say it, but it is true. And we have to observe the truth. Democracy has been weak in front of economic power, right? Because they have way much more money. Total have much more money than Uganda. So when Uganda come and negotiate with Total, Total have made $15 billion benefit that year. $15 billion benefit, just benefit, eh? The point I'm taking is businessmen are now more important than politicians. In the period I spoke to you about, in the 1960s, politicians were stronger than business people. Now business people have become so rich because of neoliberalism that they can buy politicians, they can change politicians, they can make politicians. And that is the situation we find ourselves in Uganda, in France, in the US. This is everywhere the same. Donald Trump, do you think he's a great politician? No, he's first a rich man that decides that he has so much money that he can decide to go in elections, and he has so much money that he might actually win. But that was not the case before. Before, politicians used to have more power. They used to have strong institutions. Think of Obote and the Obote era. Uganda was doing so much better. And were there elections happening and things like this? No, not really. But when a big economic power would come to Uganda, they had to listen to the politicians. Now when we become beggars of international capital, and anyone that comes with 20 million can do whatever he wants. Why? Because politicians are under a democratic regime that do not make them strong. So our institutions are weak, right? And I will finish with that. In order to think of leadership tomorrow, we need to think of leadership with institution, because leadership without institution is gonna fall.
Free your mind now. Be part of people's Pan-African.
Mr. Speaker, sir, just commenting on Comrade
Somebody gave you that
Rutatina,
name last week. Do you remember? Mr. Mtatina.
commenting on Mr. Comrade Rutatina's submission. I want to point out that I do join issues with him in as far as the truth about the international conglomerates, Total, Energies, Shell, and some of these other American and European companies are so rich that indeed some of these countries on the African continent especially do not come anywhere near. And certainly we are also aware that the companies, or for that matter the forces which do the computing, are the ones actually which come to Africa. They rob you of your resources and hence creating imbalance of trade. You are poor not because you are poor, but because certain systems have been put in place and to disadvantage people with their resources, and therefore when it comes to who owns what and who is richer than the other, you just be academic to say that these multinationals are not richer than some of our countries, just simply because the truth of the matter is that they are, but we cannot address that. Very quickly. Africa, Mr. Speaker, sir, is roughly 30.37 million kilometers squared. But of course, I have got issues with that computation because I want to believe that it is much bigger than that. But since we do not have an independent measuring system of ours, we have to rely on those who have done it and given it to us. And they also claim, Mr. Speaker, that Africa therefore constitutes about 20% of the total Earth. Still, I want to believe that we are about maybe 39, around there, or even maybe 42. And it is also estimated that Africa, this particular Africa, which is littered with, largely speaking, black-skinned people, like myself, and yourselves, largely, I say it means therefore we have people who are not necessarily dark-skinned, has about 1.4 billion people as per the computation of 2021. And Mr. Speaker, sir, therefore this continent, when you look at the rest of the continents, Asia, America, and Europe, falls in the middle. It is in the middle of the entire Earth. That is now the Africa we are talking about. We can give other attributes, but I wanted my audience to get to know that this is the particular Africa that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, sir, also there is something in the topic that has something to do with we. The topic assumes that all of us are together. I want to submit to you and to ask that the we is a far-fetched assumption because we are actually not together. It is only probable I can, with a bit of confidence, say that we, referring to us who are here, because we are Pan-Africans. I want to tell you, my audience, that people out there and the people on the African continent and beyond Africa, they have got different interests and they pursue different desires and goals. It is therefore to say we, even if we are all Africans. It becomes, so the topic is not as simple as we actually want to take it to be, because there is nothing like we. There are so many fragmented due to our history, due to our education system, that it is very hard to have the we. Mr. Speaker, sir, therefore, there is another element, another word, want. Being therefore diverse and different in our interests and desires, it is very difficult for us to have the same wants. The kind of leaders that we want, since I have already observed that there is very big problem in the we cannot have the common wants. And therefore, the leaders to take us to the kind of Africa that we want is also a problem, because the leaders are leaders in as far as the conceptual West, and especially the Western capitals, have agreed that they are leaders. If they have not, it is very impossible, almost, and we have seen this happen on the African continent, that we have got the kind of leaders that would want to take us. And in my concluding remarks, I will show you why I'm saying that the leaders on the African continent who would have taken us to where we want have systematically been eliminated, and it is therefore hard for us who are already having different desires and interests, therefore the we not there, to have the common want, and therefore the kind of leaders, those who have not taught the line that has been prescribed to us by our former masters, who have reinvented themselves in the form of neo-colonialists, cannot survive. Mr. Speaker, sir, therefore, what is this Africa that we want? We want a decolonized, a population who are mentally decolonized. Those who think independently, who can diagnose the problem with microscopic exactness and prescribe the African solutions. That is the kind of continent that we want. We also want a continent which is self-sustaining with an independent economy and with deepened intra-trade. That is the kind of Africa that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, sir, we want the Africa with great developed infrastructure, the one with proper roads, one with improved transport on water, one with proper coordination transport in air, and that is the kind of one with the infrastructure including the telephone and other related infrastructure. That is the kind of Africa that we desire, and that will therefore inform us of the kind of leaders that we must have.
That was my next question, that now after identifying the kind of Africa that you need,
then you have to fix the leaders.
now what is that leader that will take us there?
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you so much. We therefore want the kind of Africa which has gotten rid of weak states. We don't want the kind of Africa with the troubled Ambazonia in Cameroon. We don't want Africa with troubles of civil unrest in Nigeria. We don't want the Africa with problems in Central African Republic of governance. We don't want the Africa with troubles of the Nuer and the Dinkas fighting in Southern Sudan. We don't want the Africa of the Khartoum with intra-tribal wars. We don't want the Africa of the Tunisians and the Algerians and the Moroccans who are going to cut off the borders, sit in their parliaments and discriminate against people of the darker skin. We want the Africa that has created a state or states which are powerful, unified by the African Union with common goals and interests. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are interested in an Africa that is industrialized. We should not be reading about industrialization in textbooks and seeing it in video, TV, as only a thing of the West and now the Asia. There is no magic, because we know that when we were discovering fire, it was not by horror intervention. When we were discovering the spears and sharpening the iron, it was not because there was magic that had happened. If there was that revolution, therefore, the kind of Africa we need that has been left by the first, second, third, and probably the fourth revolution should not be left out on the next industrialization or revolution. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need an Africa with indigenous education system, which Africa has greatly improved on her human resource. And this particular Africa should also be having indigenous medicine. The health system should be not just alive, but it should be living within the living. Mr. Speaker, sir, our age is on agriculture, and as it was estimated by the former the executive director of African Development Bank, he said that whoever is going to be leading in agriculture by the year 2045, the continent that will be leading will be the richest continent. Our agriculture, we have got the greatest niche, since we have got well over 60% of our land as arable, fertile, not needing any fertilizers. Since we have got majority of our waters fresh, there is no way we cannot fail to take advantage of the agriculture, and we are the continent that produces organic. Therefore, revolutionizing agriculture will give us an edge as the kind of continent that everybody desires to live in, not people dying on the Mediterranean Sea and other high seas looking for terrible climates elsewhere simply because they can get some money, including also enslaving ourselves in the Emirates. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to improve as the African continent and work on the service sector. Issues to do with banking, because banking is not something foreign. It was with us as the African continent. You need to read the history of Africa properly and look at the writings of Sheikh Anta Diop for you to realize that we are not only doing very well in insurance, we are doing very well in tourism, we are also doing very well in banking, as envisaged, for instance, in the establishment and the running of a university like Timbuktu, which is arguably the very first university in the world. Mr. Speaker, sir, we do not need to borrow democracy, and my colleague Rutatina talked about it. We had our own homegrown indigenous democracy. We need to reinvent it. I do not believe at any one given time that somebody who participated in slave trade, later on participated in colonial democracy, so now who is practicing neo-colonialism is capable of bringing something that I should copy and implement. Our democracy, which is characterized by regular, so-called regular elections every after 5 years, majority of Africa, which is characterized by the observers coming here and giving us certificates, is nothing but a replica of a thief who simply wants to create a system and has managed to create a system whereby his wishes are only fulfilled in us deceiving ourselves that we are actually giving ourselves democracy, when in actual sense we are doing the bidding of the slave master. Mr. Speaker, sir,
Finally,
we need to have civil service which is alive to the challenges of our times. Our civil service is nothing currently, with due respect to those who are doing a good job, but just a combination and a congregation of compradors of the interests of the Western Europe. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, who are the leaders that we must have who are going to take us into the promised land? Mr. Speaker, sir, the kind of leaders who are going to take us into the promised land must be ready to sacrifice and die for their people, and they must be like Marcus Garvey, Dr. Khalid Mohammed, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Pombe Magufuli, J. Rawlings, Patrice Lumumba, Olympios, Abdul Gamal, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Robert Mugabe. And finally, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in the Bush days and the first 17 years from 1986. I thank you so much.
The issue of governance, leadership in Africa. What do we want, we as Africans? Where did we come from? Where are we? And where are we heading? Mr. Speaker, intellectually, if you are discussing the past, the present, and the future, you must by all standards, discuss before colonialism what was the state of Africa. What happened during colonial times? What happened the post-colonial leadership or regimes? Then what is happening now? This is very big. And what is the projection? What is your projection for the future for these young ones here? Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very big topic. I can discuss this until cows come back home. But just briefly, before colonialism, Africa was very well organized, had organized communities, had small chiefdoms and kingdoms with limited and little conflicts. Very peaceful continent. A continent that all the entire world loved to live in. People were moving freely from one border to one border with no artificial boundaries that were created by these imperials who have never paid us for that damage they caused to us. Now, when imperials came, that's when things started to change. To say the Masaba of Kenya cannot cross that river. And yet they knew that there are also some Masaba in Uganda. So they created boundaries. Now, colonial times, there were so many colonial distortions, especially our founding fathers who fought hard to fight imperialists and reclaim their continent. The founding fathers led by Kwame Nkrumah, the Lumumbas, all these people who fought for independence, all of them were killed.
That's correct.
Now, the vision bearers of Africa were killed.
Were killed. Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah,
Now,
Thomas Sankara.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, the moment
And
now,
recently Gaddafi.
yes, the moment you kill the vision bearer, it means you have also killed the what?
The vision
The
itself.
vision. So Africa now became completely black because the vision bearers were murdered in cold blood by imperialists.
The last man who was still standing,
Yes.
who had tried to take up the mantle
Yes.
and continue speaking and actually doing, was Gaddafi. And since the killing of Gaddafi, you realize that most African leaders a little bit backtracked. They kept quiet. They started now being careful.
Yes.
It is now Museveni that is trying to speak, but
Now-
also very carefully.
Yeah, now-
and William Ruto of Kenya, but carefully.
No,
they choose
things-
their words carefully.
Things, they are also aware. They are also aware.
Robert Mugabe, of course, age took him.
They are also aware. You see, when a snake bites your brother and your brother dies, when you are still young, you grow up knowing that very insect,
Animal called snake.
animal snake, and even remember where your brother was killed from. So the Musevenis, they are aware of that. Now, Mr. Speaker, the reason why the vision bearers, the founding fathers of our continent, were agitating for United States of Africa than having these fragmented so-called independent states. They knew in their wisdom that it is very hard for these fragmented states to run their affairs when the imperialists are watching. So it was going to be very easy to run United States when they are all together than having individual so-called independent states. That's why, by the way, right now, the imperialists can come and give you money and say, please, go and fight in Congo. An African president is funded to fight another president in Africa. And you say yes. So you know that even here,
We don't know.
even here,
You tell us.
even here,
Who
there
are
are
those?
some people who are paid to hate a certain tribe of people.
Are you sure?
And the money is coming through NGOs.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Mention what?
To say you go on Kampala Road and plant a bomb and finish your good capital city. A Uganda, not European, who is being given by those guys, the fathers of that man. And you religiously accept that money and you go and kill your fellow Africans. Shame on you! That's why we say understanding is not comparison. Right now, when there was a war in Ukraine, did you see the solidarity in Europe? Did you see?
Yes, we saw.
Even playing football, they say we are united against Russia. Did you see that solidarity? Bombs are being bombed in DRC. You are all quiet.
After
They have diverted you from our own problems. Now we are in the Middle East. DRC, millions of people are dying. You don't care. That's why you pass. We have people here who are coming from that border.
from Congo.
Hey, but I have not seen Congolese in Kampala here marching on the streets to say, please, we are giving solidarity to our fellow Congolese. But you will see here people, I used to see even here, some people had an organization called the Ukrainian Solidarity.
Where you know?
Not the chairman here. Not the chairman here, Mr. Speaker, you don't know him.
You know.
He is even here today. Where is the chairman of Congolese Solidarity? Where is the chairman of South Africa? South Sudan Solidarity? Who is bewitching Africans? Before even brain, those ones that were here before us, how are you arranged in your mind? You see, the reason why we have Pan-African Pyramid is to work on the mindset of emerging African leaders who are here. So that what are the new ideas that you have for us? Because you see, last time I used to tell you, there is a good word called change. You know change? Change. All of you say change. Change. Change can happen in two forms. There is a natural cause, and we call that evolution. Evolution can cause change. Then there is a revolution. So a revolution and evolution, they are the only things that can cause change. So whether you like it or not, there are people by evolution that will be changed. Whether you like it or not, they will phase out by that natural factor. They will die. They will get all
will
that
extinct.
go. Yes, they will exist by that natural factor. How are you prepared? You know, when we say how, say maybe these guys, they are dreaming. They are not dreaming. In 20 years to come, some people who are in 60s, 70s will be no more. And you think 20 years is far?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kasha.
Now, finally, when we go to church, they will tell you that God is about to come. But they also question us, but how prepared are you? How are you prepared to take over Africa? Good evening.
In Africa, we need leaders who will act against the impact of climate change, protecting the environment and our natural resources, and ensuring that our natural resources are exploited by Africans themselves.
Okay.
The Africa we need is an Africa that is free from colonial borders, an Africa with well-infrastructured development, both social and economic infrastructures. When we talk about social infrastructures investments, we talk about schools, hospitals, sort of. When we talk about economic infrastructures, we talk about roads, railways, airports, and so on, right? So that's what we need. We need an Africa that is having one currency, that is having a free trade area for Africans to understand actually. Before white money came in, Africans had a capacity to move. While we have our origin from Rwanda, we had cows, but after understanding, there is too much sunshine, or maybe hills, or there is no grass, no good pastures. We had to shift some parts of Uganda maybe. Some people from Ethiopia knew we need to move Southern Africa for us to have fresh soils. That's what we need. Africa want that is free. Secondly, on the Africa want, we need an Africa that is well established with young people that understands the real Africa. So the leaders to take us there, we need an Africa that is well conversant with the history of Africa. An African who understands how the white man was the worst personnel to deal with African people. And now a leader to take us there must be aware that the white man killed his brother, killed his sister, killed his father, and killed his mother. At the end of it, he had to store the natural resources and the artificial designs of his personnel. And after understanding that, you need to diagnose where should we go. And actually, after doing all that sagas, they had to go ahead to force us to do what they think should be done. You are much aware we are forced to grow coffee, we are forced to work in the plantations so that we can feed the white man. And you must understand an African personnel who was not killed had to be taken to white homes to work as a slave. So after understanding that, an African personnel will hold the grounds, will fight for independence. That's what I think an African personnel can do for us to be transformed. Asante.
The Africa we need. Remember, there's a time Mobutu Sese Seko when he was instilled in power, Jara Congo. The time was sponsoring his son to go to London to get education, and he was, you know what, not a boarding school, and it was what, a day school, but could board from Congo in the morning and goes to London and made breakfast from there, and then goes back to Jarasiko. That's just food for thought. Now, the leaders that we need in African continent, we need leaders who have vision, integrity, and have the ability to put across what we call cooperation, both on international and on the continental level. And the Africa that we need, as we Africans, we need Africa that has vision for the continent, that's in the future, that emphasizes sustainable development, economic growth, social inclusion, and a good government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Africa we want now, and the leader to take us there. I want to stress to this audience today that we have not run short of these leaders. We all know of the president of Tanzania, President John Pombe Magufuli, and his other works, the works that he did. Magufuli, he came as a bulldozer, but slowly he transformed into a leader of substance. if we are to start talking about his works, we remember in 2015, he cancelled a symbolic Independence Day and directed all the funds budgeted for that event to widen the highway of Boom. That was the notorious for gridlocks in the main city, Dar es Salaam. So if you just look at that, you see that in the real context of things, we have these leaders, but on the arena of things, these leaders are not brought up to the public, be recognized. So in 1997, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere Kambarage says, in his speech while he was addressing his audience, that the past generation has done its role of liberating Africa from political imperialism. And therefore, this generation, the generation we are having today, has a bigger role to play in order to liberate our continent from the traitors, the colonialists. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to end with the words of Socrates. So it says, what Socrates says about democracy more than 2,000 years ago. He said that democracy must fall because it will try to tailor to everyone. The poor will want the wealth of the rich, and democracy will give it to them. Young people will want to be respected as elderly, and democracy will give it to them. Women will want to be like men, and democracy will give it to them. Foreigners will want the rights of the natives, and indeed, democracy will give it to them. Thieves and frauders will want important government functions, and democracy will give it to them.
Even thieves.
And at that time, when thieves and frauders finally, democratically take authority, because criminals and evildoers want power, there will be worse dictatorship than in the time of any monarchy.
For us to reach in Africa that we want, we should elect leaders that have some business mindset, that intellectual, and possess wisdom that can take this country from one place to another. So we are having leaders without vision. We should look into that. So for me today, if you come and tell me that I want to be a leader, I'll ask you, are you trustworthy? Do you have the goodwill? Who gave you the credibility? Were you approved? Then our problem is we don't have grassroots.
African problems African problems.
You're one of them.
Need people's solutions. African people's solutions. The leaders we want leaders who seek for African solutions. Not those leaders who go seek for solutions of African problems from European countries.
From elsewhere.
Like Ibrahim Traoré. As a younger generation, we ask ourselves, why is Africa the most developed in terms of natural resource, but African people are the poorest of the poor?
So you have wealth, but you are poor.
We are the poorest of the poor. We don't understand the logic behind.
You cannot convert the wealth you have from the underground to utilize it.
It's very disgusting. I want to quote Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara once said, while revolutionaries as individuals can die or murdered, you cannot kill ideas. So, though many revolutionaries have been killed, like Muammar Gaddafi, to mention but a few, the revolutionary ideas still lives in us.
Yes.
And as young Africans,
we need a new government which is pro-African people's interests, with a reformed education system which is short-term, productive, practical, which is a practical education system where students can contribute towards the GDP through their involvement in the country's production. Uganda is suffering because of low tax base. But imagine you study from P1 to university without even innovating even a single toothpick. For more than 20 years you are in school. What is the use of education? What's the use of education? Another thing, we need a system where Africans own big businesses and we can control our own politics. We all know businessmen are the ones who control politics. We are the poorest of the poor. The Western countries are the richest. They are the ones controlling our politics. Go on, who is sponsoring opposition politics here? Who is sponsoring multipartyism? So we are here talking about the leaders we want, yet we are not pushing the leaders we want. We must be in a position to push the leaders we want.
The Africa we want typically refers to the future in which the continent is characterized by peace, prosperity, quality, and sustainable development. This vision includes eradication of poverty, economic growth, ensuring access to quality education, health, and promoting social and political stability. The quality of the leaders we need. What are the qualities of the leaders to access this vision? The type of the leaders, or the leaders, the qualities they should exhibit in their service. We need visionary and accountable leaders who prioritize the interests of people over their personal gains. The leaders should also be committed to good governance, transparency, and ensure a suitable distribution of resources. Thank you very much.
My name is Andrew Irumba Kaksabi, and thanks to our partners, the Fairway Hotel here and NGS Television. Say now, thank you.
Our strength in unity, our strength in unity, our strength in unity. Let's bond and march into a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, Umoja, unity, solidarity, 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 United States of Africa, our strength in unity. Let's unite our governments and elect one president. Let's form a synergy, our strength in unity. Let's unite our governments and elect one president. Let's born and march into a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, Umoja, unity, solidarity, 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 United States of Africa, Africans in India, Africans in America, Africans in Caribbean. Come, let's build our motherland, our homeland, and we become unmatchable, become unmovable, become unstoppable. Let's born and march into a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, a brand new Africa, United States of Africa, Africa. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. United States of Africa. United States of Africa.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katus.